being incarcerated has got to be a terrible situation, no matter who you are or what you are there for. We are not allowing visitors, and that's frustrating for people because of COVID. And of course, I mentioned previously, having no trials for almost a year since last March. And the stress on detainees, frankly, the stress on our workforce. I'm very worried about our workforce, and I'm worried about the health of the detainees. And at the same time, I worry about the folks that have been victims of crime.
I'm Sarah Fensky. This is St. Louis on the Air. The St. Louis Board of Aldermen is in recess until after a new mayor is elected this April. But for Mayor Lyda Krewson, things are busier than ever. Last week, we invited her to come on air to discuss changes to the city's 911 dispatch system. And we will talk about that today. But more news has broken since that invitation. And so we have a whole bunch of things on our agenda today. I feel like we should get right to it. So Mayor Krewson, thank you for joining us.
Sarah, thanks. I'm so happy to be able to be on and speak with you and your audience.
So, Mayor Krewson, this was a really tough weekend. 115 detainees took over the fourth floor of the Justice Center downtown, and they set fires and shattered windows and threw some furniture down to the sidewalks. One jail employee was injured in all that. Is he or she doing okay at this point?
He is doing okay, but it was a very scary situation. He did go to the hospital and was released, a half a day or so later, is my understanding. So he's doing okay, but he's still out on leave.
Okay. So this was a pretty frightening incident down there. What do you see as the causes of what happened over this weekend?
Well, I think there are a lot of causes. I mean, I know there are many agendas out there, and that being incarcerated has got to be a terrible situation, no matter who you are or what you are there for. But the city, we have to take care of whoever the judges send us. So, you have the prosecutor and you have the defense attorney and you have the judges, and they get together and, the judges send them to us to hold pre-trial. And so we don't have any say about who is there, how long they stay, when they go to trial, all those sorts of things. So one of the things that we believe is really an overarching difficulty is that the judges, there haven't been any trials in almost a year. And so, people are there longer than they normally would be. And the uncertainty of that, I'm certain, causes a lot of stress and consternation. And so I think that's kind of an overarching thing. It was a very scary situation. It began about 2:30 or 3 in the morning with an attack on a corrections officer. And he was hospitalized, but detainees jammed the locks, and they took over 2 different units on the 4th floor. There are 4 units per floor. So they took over 2 different units. They broke through the secure area. They jammed the locks. They broke out the glass. They set fire to furniture. They stopped up the toilets. They stopped up the drains. They, put a bunch of furniture in front of the door. Water flooded the unit, drained down onto other floors. Control panels for the locking systems were thrown out onto Tucker Street. It was just a very serious situation. And it was brought under control about 9 or 9:30 in the morning by sheriff's, police, and corrections staff. And about half of the individuals who were involved in this were moved to the 5th floor. And the 5th floor is, we call it administrative segregation, or seg. And about half of them were transferred to an open pod that was at MSI that had just been, renovation had just been completed on it.
This is over at the workhouse, the city's other jail.
Yeah, MSI, right. I know it's commonly called the workhouse. That's a throwback to decades ago. But so we also know through hearing from activist groups, seeing social media, we know that there have been complaints about food and the temperature and some of those kinds of things on the units, and certainly we're going to look into those. But I will tell you that I think the overriding difficulty here is the fact that, folks have been there a long time, and no trials for almost a year, and so that causes even additional difficulty. I think any of us would be exercised.
That's got to be
that situation.
Such a frustrating situation, as you say. But this idea of the locks, I understand the city knew that these locks were faulty. So why were people still being held in cells where these locks had these problems?
Well, it's not exactly like that. We had a couple of instances a year ago or so where a lock was jammed by someone. Jammed, jimmied, call it whatever you want. But and so we'd had a couple of instances, but never had we had a whole lot of people at one time being able to jam the locks. And of course, one person teaches the next person who teaches the next person. And these locks are 20 years old. And there's, they open and close probably dozens of times a day. They're worn. The guts of the locks, for lack of a better word, really needs to be replaced, and that's crystal clear now. But you have one incident and a second incident, you don't automatically think, oh, all of these locks need to be replaced. But we believe that they do all need to be replaced, and we're working furiously with consultants and manufacturers to get started on that. That's going to be expensive, and we don't have the final cost on that, $3 to $4 million, maybe even more than that. And of course, the city, as always, we are in very dire financial position right now, but luckily, or fortunately, I should say, over the last 4 years, we have built up the city's reserves to about $52 million. When I came into office 4 years ago, they were $16 million. And so if we have to, and I'm sure this is the first time some members of E&A will be hearing this, but if we have to take these funds out of our reserves to make these repairs. They're more than repairs, but replace the guts of the lock and the other components. These are electronic locks.
So this is important to get these fixed. This needs to be a priority.
It absolutely has to be done, and it has to be done as quickly as possible. But these are not locks that you can go to Home Depot and buy. Let me just tell you that. These are, these are penal grade locks, and they're quite complex, and they're electronic, and they go to a control board at the sort of the unit station. So it's a very expensive thing. They're on the third and the fourth floor. There are 528 doors, rooms. And so that's just on the third and the fourth floor. The fifth floor has a different type of lock. The second floor is used for other things, but just the third and the fourth floor, there are 528 rooms.
So this could be pretty costly here, but
this is going to cost a lot. I have to do it. No
what
choice.
About these underlying problems here? I mean, there's been interviews that have come out since with people who've stayed there, and they say there's a lack of personal protective equipment, social distancing is a problem. They say there's not food, there's not sufficient heat. Is that an equally big concern?
Well, we need to take each one of those probably individually, and that's one of the things that, of course, the new task force, which I announced yesterday, will look into. But let's just take temperature, heat control. Last year, 18 months ago, the entire control system for the building, it's electronic, like any major commercial building, was replaced, and it's computer programmed, and we will provide. I don't have it with me at this point, but we will. It's supposedly programmed at 72 degrees, and there'll be a record of what it is. So that's to the temperature, to the food. We have the menus. We have a food service company. The menus are approved by a dietitian. We have menus for diabetic, menus for, regular menus and special menus, I should call them. And so, I think that is not an accurate issue, but we are going to find that out. I mean, I fully recognize that, we should have an independent group look at that and determine it. So that was, you mentioned something else, but that was food, that was...
the lack of PPE and
let me tell you about that. So once every 2 weeks, each detainee gets a package, and it has snacks in it and different things, but it also has 4 masks in it. And so if at any time they want another mask, we have thousands of masks. Let me tell you, we have a big supply of masks. And if you noticed, all the detainees that we could see standing in front of the broken out window were wearing masks.
They did have masks on, yeah.
And thankfully, so masks are readily available. Anyone who needs a COVID test or wants a COVID test, our COVID protocols are posted on the website. Part of the reason, and I know that this has been talked about a lot, right now, Dale said yesterday we had 3 positive cases at CJC. And we have had a couple of spikes there, and I'm sorry. We've had a couple of spikes, and each time our protocols have brought the number of cases back down to at or near 0. And so, this is congregate living facility. When someone comes in to CJC, everyone comes into CJC and then later maybe transferred to MSI. But when someone comes into CJC, they are quarantined for 14 days. To be sure that they don't have COVID before they are mixed in with the general population. Now, that being said, we have a lot of employees going in and out of there, and employees, of course, are not quarantined, and they can be positive. And so we did recently offer the vaccine to all corrections staff, and many of them took it. Over 50% of them took it. We would like for all of them to take it, but it's a voluntary thing. So probably the COVID is most likely brought in from staff. We don't know that for sure, but since the detainees are quarantined for 14 days, that seems like likely.
Okay.
So
there, it sounds like there's some protocols in place. This is something you've taken very seriously within that system.
Oh, yeah. I would encourage you to look at our website and read the COVID protocols. They are quite extensive, and Commissioner Glass said yesterday that he thought over the last 11 months we've had maybe 80 cases, and not all at one time, of course, but cumulatively in combined MSI and CJC. Now, of course, you want 0 cases, but there's no workplace or there's no place anywhere that's had 0 cases. And so, we are very serious about that. And that's actually part of the problem, because we are not allowing visitors. And that's frustrating for people because of COVID. And of course, I mentioned previously, having no trials for almost a year has been really tough. And that's not put on our local judges. That's the Missouri Supreme Court who, determines that. But we need to get back to trials. We need to move some of these cases.
Well, so with this task force that you've put together to look at the conditions there and see what's really going on, I know you're hoping that they will act on this quickly. It seems like there's always task forces that are formed. They end up producing these long reports, and then they just sit on the shelf. Why should people think this could be different here?
Well, I think the question is, do you just say, nope, we've looked at it, the city's looked at it, everything's great. Now, you wouldn't like that either. So,
that's true.
You wouldn't like that either. So I think having a task force, and this task force is headed by Mike Wolf, who's a former Supreme Court judge and former dean of the SLU Law School. It's got a variety of people on it who I think bring good skills to it. I mean, it has community activist Darrell Gray on it. It has a criminal justice consultant on it, someone who knows how to run jails. It has Reverend Charles Norse, Dr. Pam Walker, who's a former head of the health department here and public health executive. This is about health, so I thought that was important. It has the chairman of the Public Safety Committee for the Board of Aldermen, Alderman Vaccaro, and Alderman Jeffrey Boyd, who's both the vice chairman of the Public Safety Committee and the head of the Black Caucus.
So you have
Senator Nasheed,
Yeah.
Adolphus Pruitt. So, yeah, a lot of good folks.
We do need to take a quick break. We'll be back shortly to continue this conversation. This is St. Louis on the Air on St. Louis Public Radio, 90.7 KWMU.
Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, committed to conservation and careful management of the state's forests to make them more resilient and better habitats for wildlife. ChooseWood.com.
And now back to our conversation. Our guest today is St. Louis Mayor Lyda Krewson. And Mayor, I want to just follow up on one of those headlines that we just heard as it relates to St. Louis County and its vaccine supply. I know this is something you've also been worried about here in the city. What has been the problem with getting these vaccines to the metro areas, which have so many people in need of getting them?
Well, that's a whole story. Could I clear up one thing from our earlier segment? I said there were 3 cases of
Sure.
COVID. The 3 are at MSI, none at CJC.
Okay. And this is current
I don't know if
cases of COVID-19.
Current cases, yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if I said that correctly before or not. But at any rate, so now on to vaccines. The whole world is frustrated about vaccines. And so is the city of St. Louis. You may have seen that I sent a letter to the governor last week asking him to allow Walgreens and CVS in the St. Louis area to administer vaccines through the federal vaccine program. The state has allowed, they have authorized Walmart and Health Mart. Mm-hmm. Well, we don't have any Walmarts in St. Louis.
I didn't even know we had
City.
health marts. Yeah.
Well, we have 3, and they're 3 small pharmacies, and they're excellent pharmacies, but Health Mart is a sort of an affiliation, I think I would describe it as. And so one of there's West Pine Pharmacy is in the Central West End. A lot of people go there, but it's a small place. Mm-hmm. And so we're happy that they may be able to give some vaccinations, but they won't be able to do it on a large scale. So I believe to utilize the entities where most of us go to get our prescriptions or our, sundries or whatever it is we're buying. And that in the St. Louis area, there are 30 or 31 CVS and Walgreens.
It almost feels hard not to take this personally. Do you think Governor Parson is trying to just punish or ignore areas that didn't vote for him?
Oh, I've seen that. I don't think that is the case, but let me just say that when the whole state's getting 75,000 vaccines a week for 6.2 million people, we're getting such minuscule numbers. Mm-hmm. Right now, last week, the city of St. Louis got 975 doses. We have some second shots to give on this Friday for about 450. And then we have been assured by Dr. Randall Williams that we will get 3,900 doses next week because we have to do the second shots on the folks that we vaccinated, 2.5 weeks ago now, or 2 weeks ago. Mm-hmm. So, but that's some progress, but it's not enough progress. And, I read the national stuff. I know that you do too. This is a problem all over the world. Mm-hmm. But, there just has to be more supply. And when this feels like everything else. First it was PPE, right? We didn't have masks. At the beginning of this, the city was paying over $1 a piece, $1.29 I think it was, for the surgical masks. Well, now they're in great supply, and I don't know, they're a quarter or 15 cents or something,
Yeah.
Then it was tests. Then there weren't enough tests. Well, now there are enough tests. The city's doing about 8,000 tests a week. And we still need to do testing. And now here we are on to vaccines. And I think our frustration goes to our desperation and our anxiety about this very contagious and very serious. Many people, die from it and have very serious consequences. And so it goes to the, our frustration and how scared we are is really what that comes down to. And, we're in a situation where people are trying to jump the line, where there is a line, and all that kind of thing. It's just, we have to have more supply. And I think we will have more supply, but it can't come soon enough.
Boy, that's I want to just put an exclamation point on that thought. Mayor Krewson, I am going to go to the phone lines now, and we do want to let you know, if you're listening and you have a question for Mayor Krewson, we do have phone lines that are open. You can join our conversation at 314-382-8255. That's 382-TALK. Let's go to Andrew, who's calling from St. Louis. Andrew, hi, you're on St. Louis on the air.
Hi, Mayor Krewson, and thanks for taking my call. I was just wondering if the ACLU has been involved in any sort of way regarding your plan, and if there's anything you can do to help restore due process to people being held at the Justice Center.
And Andrew, do you mean has the ACLU weighed in on the task force plan, or do you mean a different plan?
The task force plan.
That's a good question. I don't know the answer. Mayor Krewson?
So the task force is just formed less than 24 hours ago. So, they're getting ready to launch. The ACLU regularly corresponds with us, and certainly I see their social media posts and that sort of thing. And we welcome a conversation with them. I know that they have had some conversations in the past with Commissioner Glass and with Judge Jimmy Edwards. So, one of the things we feel, I don't know if you were listening early on, Andrew, is that, the fact that there have been no trials for over a year, or for almost a year, I should say, since last March, is really exacerbating the situation and the stress on detainees. Frankly, the stress on our workforce. I'm very worried about our workforce, and I'm worried about the health of the detainees. And at the same time, I worry about the folks that have been victims of crime. So it's a bit of a three-legged stool here, and we want to do the best we can for all of those parties.
Andrew, thank you for that call. We also got a question from Leslie, who was happy to have this taken off the air. She says, what about the air handling system at the Justice Center? She's concerned about air recirculating and that could be something that spreads COVID around. Is that something that's been looked at?
So I don't actually know the answer to that question, but as I mentioned earlier, we do have a new control system that handles all of the air exchanges and the temperature and all that sort of thing at the jail. I can't speak to the engineering specifics of that, but certainly that can be something. We believe that the quarantine system that we have in place, and Leslie, I would really encourage you to look on our website because you can see the the CJC and MSI COVID protocols. They are very extensive.
Okay. Leslie, thank you for that question as well. I'm going to take one more call here. Harry is calling from University City. Yes, Harry. Harry is there. Harry, hi, you're on St. Louis on the air.
Yes, this is Harry from University City, and I just wanted to make a comment and have the mayor react to that. I've heard some of the mayoral candidates commenting about what should be done in regard to crime, and one of the candidates stressed the need to put the highest degree of priority on getting these repeat offenders off the streets first. And I've worked in the criminal justice system for many years, feel like I understand the criminal mindset, and I believe that this candidate is right on target with that priority. And then after that is taken care of, the city should address things like prevention of crime and so on and so forth.
Harry, thank you for that call there. Mayor Krewson, what are your thoughts? I guess it's safe to say you do believe we should get repeat offenders off the streets.
Oh, that's a safe bet. But Harry, first of all, let me say, I'm glad you're interested in the mayor's race in the city of St. Louis, even though you're in University City. So that's good because certainly, we all affect one another. I think that you cannot, in this job, you can't just do one thing at a time. You have to do both and. So, yes, the police department absolutely prioritizes those most violent offenders or those repeat offenders, violent offenders. And that is the highest priority. But at the same time, you do have to try to address quality of life issues for people who may not be violent offenders, but are still, really difficult for neighborhoods. And then at the same time, you have to work on prevention. We don't have the luxury of doing one thing at a time. So we've done a lot of prevention, but prevention takes some time. We have Cure Violence in place. You know that we have just launched 911 diversion. We have 750,000 calls a year into our dispatch center, and many of them are duplicates, and honestly, some of them are calling to see who plays in the Super Bowl.
People call 911 for that?
Yeah, somebody called my office the other day for it as well. They insisted on talking to the mayor, but they talked to my assistant, who does a great job. And
Your assistant did not put them through.
She didn't, but she did answer the question.
Wow.
How about that?
That's a good assistant.
So it is, and he also wanted to know who I was rooting for. So she told him that I was rooting for the Chiefs, but she was rooting for the Bucks because she used to live there. So anyway,
you're making everyone happy with that answer. But
yeah, well, she did it. I was, she's a very sage individual. But my point here really is that, yes, our focus is absolutely on the most violent offenders. And, everyone who is detained in jail pre-trial is there on very serious charges. In addition, when I came into office, there were over 1,400 people in jail, and today there are about 800 people in jail, so just about half. And there are, some people say, well, maybe that's why you have so much crime, but I prefer to think that, we have hundreds of people out on ankle bracelets, which, by the way, the city is paying for, because believe me, it's a lot better use of your funds if you can keep track of someone on an ankle bracelet than if you have to detain them. And it's better for them, too. They can go to work, they can be at home, etc. So the point here is you have to do it all. You don't get the luxury. In a campaign, you do, and I'm not going to be too hard on the folks that are running a campaign because they haven't been here, but they will know when they get here that, oh, gosh, I can't just do that first and then do the next thing second. You have to be able to multitask a lot of things here.
Well, Harry, thank you for that question. And Mayor Krewson, in our final minutes here, I'm almost embarrassed. We lured you onto this show because we wanted to talk about the changes in the 911 system. And other than you alluding to that just now, we have not got to that today. There's just too much happening at City Hall. But I do want to just chat briefly about that. Some of these changes seem pretty big, and they seem like good common sense stuff. What took us this long to get to this ability to prioritize 911 calls over other calls, for example?
Well, they were always prioritized, but let me explain that real quickly. This is new software. This is a major upgrade to the software that we used and to the screens that folks look at who are answering the calls. We have one call center. We need more dispatchers. If anybody wants to be a dispatcher for the city, that's what they are called. And but the point here is that people call 231 1212 to report, very minor things that are not emergencies. And we've told them to do that over the years. But those people need to go on hold. And I know that that is really frustrating. If your car was broken into overnight and you're calling in to try to report it, that actually isn't a 911 call at that point because it happened. We can't go there and catch the guy or gal. So yes, this is new software. It's going to help in terms of answering calls, and we have pretty good response time in St. Louis in terms of dispatching police officers. But this is better, and it's just a long-needed upgrade to that system. And like everything in this city, it's always about the economics, especially this year when we are projecting almost a $70 million reduction in our revenue. And, that comes from our biggest expense is people, is payroll. And, but the sales tax is down, the hotel motel is down, restaurant is down. The COVID, we'll come back out of this, but for, it's a pretty difficult budget situation right now. And it'll be a couple of years, I would guess, before we're going to be out of that. And we have not gotten any direct aid from the federal government. No city has, to replace lost tax revenue. We have gotten money to help with rental assistance, to help with homeless assistance, to help with testing, health department things. We've gotten funds for that. But in terms of replacing our revenue, no one has gotten that yet. And so cities across the United States are in deep budget problems.
Well, so this is a tough time. You still went ahead with the purchase on this new software, I imagine, even if it was placed before the pandemic, it's now going into place during. Was this a fairly costly system?
I don't remember what the amount was, but it's in the hundreds of thousands. And, it's sort of like the locks on the jail right now. We're going to have to go into our reserves to pay for that, because it's clear that even though we had a couple of isolated incidents a year or so ago, now it's getting worse and worse. They're 20 years old. We have to do it. And we cannot run a deficit budget, and so we'll have to find the funds maybe by going into our reserves to do that.
And so this 911 system, it sounds like this was a high enough priority that this had to be done.
It has to be done. It's a matter of software. It's a matter of people. We have a high turnover in our dispatch because people get a lot of good experience really quickly, and then they can go to an adjoining county and they can make more money, and they do it. And that's, of course, really that we train them. They get good training, and so we have to adjust our salaries there as well.
Okay. So that sounds like yet another thing that's going to be on the agenda here. Boy, there is so much going on. I do want to say we talked to all 4 of the mayoral candidates last week, and we asked them what is going well, and the one thing everybody pointed to is cops and clinicians, which diverts these calls to these social workers. So last question today, are you feeling good about that program as it's finally rolling out beyond the pilot? That's now a reality in St. Louis.
Absolutely. I do feel good about it. I will say that I was the one who made the motion at the ENA meeting to take $860,000 out of the MSI budget to do this. And so that's good, but, we need money in every department, frankly. The economics of this city, most of you know I'm an accountant by training, a CPA. The economics of our city are very, very thin and with a lot of obligations.
Well, that's a very depressing note to be leaving us on, but a note of realism, and I think we'd all be wise to hear it. So, St. Louis Mayor Lyda Krewson, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Sarah. I love doing it.
This is St. Louis on the Air on St. Louis Public Radio, 90.7 KWMU. If you learned something new from today's episode, consider leaving us a review and rating on Apple Podcasts on the App Store. It's the easiest way to help people discover our show. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association. Missouri produces wood pallets, railroad ties, white oak barrels, hardwood floors, and more. Details on the variety of products made in the state are at choosewood.com.